After 14 months, I never knew you had twins. Dominic's voice cracked with shock and disbelief. Secrets, lies, and a past that could destroy everything come crashing back as he faces the woman he once loved, holding children he didn't know were his. Who betrayed him? Who can he trust? Tonight, every revelation will change their lives forever. Watch till the end. You won't see the twists coming. Welcome back to Heart-Woven Tales. I'm Selena, hope you're doing well. I'd love to know, where are you listening to me from today? Make sure you stay with me till the very end because today's story is full of twists and emotions you won't want to miss. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss a story. All right, let's dive in. The gala had been buzzing with opulence, laughter, and the subtle hum of deals being made behind silk curtains and crystal chandeliers. But the moment Dominic Vale's silhouette appeared in the grand entrance, the air changed. It wasn't the weight of his presence alone. It was the storm of contained fury that radiated from him, sharp enough to make the chatter die mid-sentence. Guests glanced nervously over their shoulders, sensing the undercurrent of menace that accompanied him, though none could place it. He had a singular purpose tonight, a mission that made the glittering dresses, champagne glasses, and polite laughter feel like a backdrop to an imminent reckoning. Dominic's eyes swept the room with predator-like precision, scanning for the one person who had dared to betray him, the person who had attempted to sabotage the empire he had built with blood, intelligence, and ruthlessness. Every step he took resonated in the polished marble hall, the echo like a warning drumbeat to those who knew him, and even to those who didn't. He wasn't here to make small talk or to entertain the niceties of high society. He was here to extract the truth, and if necessary, he would leave chaos in his wake to get it. But then, the world shifted in an instant. The fury that had consumed him, the fire that had sharpened his focus into a blade, fractured the second he saw her. Elara Quinn entered the room with a poise that defied the chaos, holding twin babies swaddled in shimmering silver blankets. She moved cautiously, as if the entire gala were a minefield, and yet she commanded attention without demanding it. Dominic froze mid-step, his instincts screaming both confusion and recognition. She was nothing like the traitor he had imagined, nothing like the specter of betrayal he had rehearsed confronting. Her expression was taut with guarded strength, eyes scanning the crowd while cradling her children with a protective tenderness that tugged at something Dominic thought he had long buried. One of the babies lifted its tiny head and stared at him with startling steel blue eyes, a gaze so familiar that Dominic felt as though the past had leapt out from the shadows and slammed into him. Memories he had tried to erase, the promises he had broken, the nights he had left her to face danger alone, the fleeting warmth of moments that now seemed impossibly distant, roared back with a vengeance, demanding answers he wasn't ready to face. Elara's eyes flicked briefly to him, a flash of recognition passing across her face. But she immediately averted her gaze, keeping the twins shielded between her arms. Dominic's every instinct urged him forward, yet something held him back: caution, shock, disbelief, and the raw pulse of unresolved history. The crowd around them shifted nervously as whispers began to ripple through the room, subtle enough that most didn't grasp the tension, but sharp enough to make Dominic's pulse accelerate. He moved, each step deliberate, controlled, the distance between them closing with a gravity that seemed to pull on the very air. Yet before he could reach her, a murmur of panic sliced through the room, a hiss that carried over the clinking of glasses and polite conversation. Heads turned, eyes widened, and the collective awareness of imminent danger spread like wildfire. Dominic's gaze locked on the source of movement at the edge of the ballroom, and in that instant clarity struck him harder than any revelation he had expected. The attack wasn't aimed at him, it was aimed at them. Elara instinctively shifted the twins closer, her breath catching as she realized the peril she had brought into the heart of the gala. Dominic's mind raced, instantly assessing exits, threats, and angles of attack, every muscle taut with readiness. The crowd surged and stumbled, some fleeing instinctively, others frozen in indecision, their movements creating a chaotic tide around him. One hand clenched into a fist, while the other hovered near his coat, where he kept his concealed weapon, though his thoughts were already 3 steps ahead. Someone had come specifically for the twins, and that fact seared through him with an intensity far sharper than any anger he felt for past betrayals. The babies, innocent and unaware, were now the center of a game far more dangerous than either of them could fully comprehend. Elara's lips quivered as she whispered a warning that barely carried over the rising panic. "They're here for them. Not you." Dominic's head snapped toward her, the words slicing through the haze of his fury and forcing a clarity that was both terrifying and invigorating. He needed to act, but moving hastily could expose them. Every shadow, every elegantly dressed guest, every glint of crystal or gold became a potential threat in his calculating gaze. His mind flicked through scenarios at lightning speed, each possibility more dangerous than the last. The twins stirred slightly, their cries soft but urgent, pulling at Dominic's instincts in a way that no threat to his empire ever had. Protecting them was no longer a choice. It was immediate necessity, an instinctual command overriding all else. A sudden shimmer of movement drew Dominic's attention to the far end of the room, where a figure darted between columns, masked and deliberate. He could feel the crowd's unease crystallize into fear, a physical pressure that pressed in on every side. He reached Elara's side just as her eyes widened, signaling the first tangible threat. One of the babies shifted in her arms, sensing tension she hadn't yet articulated. Dominic's hand brushed against hers in a moment of unspoken coordination, and for a fraction of a second, the weight of unspoken history, anger, longing, and protective instinct collided. Time seemed to stretch, the gala's glittering opulence fading into insignificance against the sharp, crystalline focus of survival. Suddenly, a loud crash rang from the opposite side of the ballroom as a chandelier trembled, swinging perilously, forcing guests to duck or stumble back. Dominic's senses sharpened to the edge of instinct. He noted the masked figure's trajectory, the glint of a weapon, the path of escape, and the imminent danger to the children. Every detail, every potential obstacle, every human in the room became part of the calculation. He moved with precision, each step measured, closing the distance to shield Elara and the twins, while simultaneously preparing to neutralize the threat. The sound of panicked whispers and shuffling feet heightened the tension, echoing the pulse in his own chest. Elara's breathing hitched as a server, unaware of the danger, nearly collided with her, spilling a tray of crystal glasses. The noise reverberated like a gunshot in Dominic's ears, triggering his reflexes. He grabbed her elbow, pulling her into a narrow gap between marble pillars, and for the first time, the twins' cries pierced the room, a sharp, fragile counterpoint to the chaos. Dominic's eyes scanned, calculating angles, anticipating moves, preparing for confrontation without hesitation. The masked figure had paused, perhaps noticing Dominic for the first time, and in that instant time seemed suspended, pregnant with imminent action. A sudden gust of movement from the crowd forced Dominic to react. An elderly guest stumbled into his path, forcing him to shift the twins slightly, his mind racing. The chaos became a living, breathing entity, pressing against them from every side. Elara's whispered questions tumbled out in rapid succession, sharp and fragmented, demanding answers Dominic could barely supply amidst the threat. He held up a finger, a silent command to focus, and in that moment a waiter's dropped silver tray clanged against the marble, producing a resonance that seemed to mark the opening of something far more dangerous. Dominic's heart hammered as he realized the masked intruder wasn't merely opportunistic. They were trained, deliberate, and singularly focused on the babies. Every instinct screamed that the night would not end without blood, screams, or both. He tightened his grip on the small space Elara provided, ready to shield, to act, to destroy anyone foolish enough to threaten them. The twins shifted again, tiny hands brushing against Dominic's jacket, a sharp reminder that their vulnerability was absolute and his responsibility undeniable. Elara glanced at him, eyes wide, and mouthed the words, "Why now?" Dominic didn't answer, because the answer was already in motion. The movement of the intruder, the tension in the room, the silent understanding of imminent danger that hung heavier than the chandeliers themselves. He took a deep breath, tuning into every detail, every shadow, every sound, every subtle shift in the crowd. The gala, once a playground of wealth and power, had become a battlefield, and the innocents in her arms were the center of the storm. The masked figure advanced, deliberate and confident, stepping over fallen trays and startled guests with inhuman precision. Dominic calculated his approach, weighing every second, every motion, every variable. A server screamed and ducked, and the figure's attention snapped in Dominic's direction for a fleeting moment, enough for Dominic to catch the subtle twitch of a finger on a weapon. A bead of sweat slid down Dominic's temple. Though he didn't notice it, his focus was absolute. The twins whimpered softly, sensing the tension, and Elara's lips trembled as she tried to remain calm. Dominic's mind raced through escape routes, potential attacks, and the deadly calculus of the intruder's skill set. Each heartbeat carried urgency, clarity, and precision, and every second brought them closer to confrontation. Then, as if the night itself held its breath, a hush fell over the room, the kind of silence that precedes disaster. Dominic's gaze flicked to the chandelier swinging dangerously overhead, to the walls lined with wealthy, unarmed guests, and finally to the masked figure who had frozen, considering the next move. Dominic's hand moved subtly, brushing against his concealed weapon while keeping the other free to shield the twins. Elara's whisper was almost lost in the tension. "They want them." Dominic's jaw tightened, and for the first time, the full weight of the night struck him. The anger, the past, the betrayal, and the responsibility all collided with one undeniable truth. The target was not him, nor his empire, nor the reputation he had built over decades. It was them, the children, the fragile embodiment of a life he hadn't known he had lost. The crowd instinctively parted, giving a sliver of space, but it was not enough. The masked figure advanced again, and Dominic stepped forward, his every move calculated, a living barrier between the intruder and the children. Time slowed, breaths held, hearts pounding, and for a moment, everything, the laughter, the luxury, the noise, disappeared. Only the threat remained, and the unshakable certainty that the night would change them forever. As a crystal glass shattered under the masked figure's foot, Dominic's mind snapped to clarity and his eyes locked onto Elara's. No words passed, yet understanding surged between them. They had no choice but to confront this danger together. And in that split second, the final terrifying truth crystallized in Dominic's mind. He could fight for the Empire, he could fight for vengeance, but he had never faced an enemy as precious, as irreplaceable as these children. The first chapter ended with a pulse of dread, a quiet before the storm, and the chilling realization that the night's true battle had just begun. Dominic's eyes narrowed. Elara held the twins tighter, and the masked intruder advanced, the line between survival and disaster thinner than ever. The attack was not for him, it was for them, and that truth reverberated through his chest with the sharpness of a dagger. The chaos of the gala had reached a fever pitch, yet Dominic's mind was razor sharp, slicing through the panic with instinct born of years in a world where hesitation was deadly. The chandelier above them trembled dangerously as the gunshot reverberated through the marble hall, scattering shards of crystal that caught the ambient light in violent flashes. Dominic's hand shot out, gripping Elara's arm with an urgency that brooked no argument, and he pulled her into the narrow shadow of a marble pillar. The twins squirmed, their small cries echoing sharply in the cavernous room, amplifying the urgency of the moment. Every second mattered. Every decision could mean the difference between survival and catastrophe. Dominic's gaze flicked across the room, scanning for the source of the shot. For the masked figure who had turned the gala from a celebration into a hunting ground. Elara struggled against him, her face flushed with a mixture of anger and fear. "You can't control me, Dominic!" she hissed, her voice trembling with frustration and adrenaline. But Dominic barely registered her words. His focus was split between shielding the twins and calculating their next move. He crouched slightly, moving them into a tighter embrace, as the sharp scent of gunpowder mingled with the perfume of high society, a surreal juxtaposition that made the danger feel both immediate and unreal. The room around them was a storm of movement, guests diving for cover, glasses shattering, waiters stumbling, and the masked intruder maneuvering with silent, deadly precision. Every flicker of motion demanded Dominic's attention. Every sound, a scream, a footstep, a clatter, could signal the next attack. He looked down at the babies, noticing the subtle traits that mirrored his own. The sharp angles of a tiny nose, the steel blue gaze of one, the way their fists clenched instinctively at sudden noise. Doubt gnawed at him, twisting like a blade in his chest. How had these children survived without him? How had someone gone to such extreme lengths to shield them, to keep him unaware of what was his by blood and by right? His mind raced, attempting to reconcile the betrayal he had always believed Elara had committed with the protective instincts she displayed now. She wasn't just a woman in his past, she was a mother, a guardian, someone who had been forced to navigate a world that he had always dominated, yet had never fully shielded her from. Before either could react further, alarms blared through the gala, a shrill, cutting sound that vibrated through the marble floors and crystal chandeliers. The guests froze in terror. Some stumbled in panic. Others fled toward the exits, the chaos amplifying the danger. Dominic's heart sank as he realized the precision of the attack. The intruder wasn't acting alone, and the enemy had infiltrated the building long before he had arrived. His eyes scanned the hall with a predator's clarity, noting exits, hiding spots, and every person whose movement seemed suspicious. Time itself seemed to compress. Every heartbeat was magnified, every second a decision point. Elara held the twins closer, her small hands trembling, and Dominic could feel the tension radiating from her like heat. She whispered, almost inaudibly, "I don't know who's after us." Her voice cracked with fear, yet there was a brittle determination underneath that he recognized. She was trying to protect them the same way he would have, even as she attempted to fend off his interference. Dominic's chest tightened with the realization that she had carried these children into a world of danger alone, without his knowledge, without his protection, and he had been blind to it all. Guilt struck him sharply, a physical weight, but there was no time for remorse. The intruder was still out there, moving deliberately, hunting, calculating, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. A sudden movement at the edge of the light caught Dominic's attention, a masked figure emerging into the glare, holding something in gloved hands. The object gleamed under the chandelier's fractured glow, a photograph that seemed to pulse with menace. His eyes narrowed as recognition flickered. The intruder wasn't merely observing, they were taunting, threatening, presenting the image of the twins as a declaration. Every instinct screamed at Dominic. This was personal. This wasn't a random act of violence. Someone had planned this meticulously, had waited for the perfect opportunity to strike at the heart of his world through the most vulnerable point imaginable. Elara's grip on the twins tightened as a small sob escaped one of the babies, a sound so raw and innocent that it made Dominic's jaw clench with protective fury. He stepped slightly forward, his movements controlled, ready to confront the intruder, yet mindful of the fragile lives in his arms. The masked figure's eyes met his, a glint of calculation that sent a chill through the room. Dominic's pulse quickened, matching the rhythm of the panic that had seized the guests. He calculated, repositioned, and prepared for immediate action, his mind racing through every possible scenario while keeping Elara and the twins shielded. The intruder took another step forward, and the photograph was raised slightly, angled toward Dominic. The image captured the twins in the silver blankets, their innocence stark against the cold, clinical composition of the picture. Dominic's stomach churned. The image wasn't just a threat. It was a message. The enemy knew exactly what they were after, knew exactly how to manipulate fear, and understood the depth of Dominic's connection to these children. Each second stretched, tension winding tighter as the masked figure advanced. The room seemed to shrink around them, chandeliers trembling, guests frozen, as if time itself had been suspended in anticipation of what would come next. Elara's voice broke the momentary silence, low and urgent. "We need to move. Now." Dominic's eyes flicked toward the nearest exit, calculating the shortest path while keeping the intruder in view. He moved with precision, adjusting his stance, ready to intercept any attack. The masked figure didn't rush. Instead, they measured, deliberate and calm, in contrast to the chaos surrounding them. It was a taunt and a warning in equal measure. They were in control, and Dominic was merely a variable in their plan. The twins stirred, tiny fists curling, and Dominic instinctively whispered reassurances, though his voice carried a steely edge. He could feel Elara's tension radiating, hear her shallow breaths, see her determination to protect them at all costs. Every instinct he had sharpened, every skill he had honed over years in the underworld, converged in this singular moment: protect, survive, and confront. And yet the masked intruder remained poised, a symbol of precision and menace, a figure who seemed to exist solely to challenge him where he was most vulnerable. The first of the chandeliers above them trembled again, and a crystal shard fell with a sharp ping onto the marble floor. Guests screamed and dove for cover. Dominic adjusted his hold on the twins, moving them behind a more substantial pillar, shielding them from the potential ricochet of chaos. Elara's glare met his briefly, fury mixed with fear, a silent accusation that he had arrived too late to prevent danger, yet too early to control it. Dominic didn't respond with words. There were none that could convey the mixture of regret, anger, and protective determination surging through him. Actions alone would speak, and the night demanded precision over conversation. The intruder lifted the photograph slightly higher, tilting it in the light. Dominic's mind raced. Who had supplied this image? Who had orchestrated this moment with such meticulous planning? Every second, every flicker of movement could tip the scales. He calculated angles, escape routes, and countermeasures, aware that a single misstep could be catastrophic. The baby's soft cries punctuated the tension, a reminder that this was no longer a battle over empire, revenge, or pride. It was over lives that depended entirely on his decisions. Suddenly, a waiter stumbled into the corridor, nearly colliding with Dominic, and the masked figure's head snapped in their direction. Dominic seized the moment, positioning himself between the intruder and the children, his body a living barrier, his mind cataloging threats and opportunities with deadly accuracy. The masked intruder paused, evaluating Dominic, the photograph still raised, as if measuring his resolve and the depth of his fear. Each breath, each heartbeat, each shifting shadow became part of a tense, unspoken calculus of survival. Elara whispered again, her voice trembling but firm. "We can't stay here. We have to move." Dominic's eyes flicked toward the nearest service exit, noting the potential hazards and blocked paths. The intruder's eyes glinted through the mask, a subtle challenge that made it clear they were not merely observing. They were provoking, daring him to act. Dominic shifted slightly, feeling the weight of the children against him, their innocence anchoring him even as danger loomed. The gallery of terrified guests around them faded into background noise. All that mattered was the children and the figure who threatened them. A sudden alarm blared, louder this time, echoing through the building and masking the quiet footsteps of others who might have entered unnoticed. Dominic's pulse raced as he realized the intruder wasn't acting alone. Someone else could be inside, moving silently, calculating, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. He adjusted the twins' blankets, scanning rapidly, calculating, preparing to move at a moment's notice. Elara's eyes widened, the subtle flicker of panic passing across her face as she realized the threat was far more extensive than she had imagined. The masked figure stepped forward, holding the photograph with deliberate care, the edges catching the light and casting an almost menacing glow across the hall. Dominic's jaw tightened. The babies stirred, tiny fists pushing against the blankets, sensing the danger. Elara pressed them closer, murmuring soft reassurances she barely believed herself, while Dominic's mind raced through possibilities. He had to protect them, navigate the chaos, and confront the intruder, all without giving an inch of advantage. Every movement, every decision was amplified, weighted with potential consequences. Time seemed to stretch, the hall filled with the metallic scent of panic and gunpowder. Dominic's eyes flicked across every exit, noting guests' movements, structural obstacles, and the shifting figure that held the photograph with almost surgical precision. The twins' cries grew more urgent, slicing through the tension. Dominic tightened his stance, aware that one false move could turn panic into catastrophe. Elara's grip on him was a silent plea for protection, and he accepted it without hesitation. The intruder paused, tilting the photograph as if to mock them, and Dominic felt a surge of controlled rage, a cold, precise determination that would guide his next actions. The air around them was thick with anticipation, the room itself seeming to hold its breath, waiting for the first move. Every detail mattered: a fallen glass, a shifting shadow, the faint echo of another step elsewhere in the building. Dominic's mind cataloged, predicted, and prepared, all while maintaining the fragile balance of shielding the children and guiding Elara to safety. And then, as if the night itself had conspired to increase the stakes, the masked intruder stepped fully into the light, revealing the photograph in full view. The twins' innocent faces stared out from the glossy paper, and Dominic realized with a jolt that the attack was no longer abstract. It was intimate, deliberate, and terrifyingly personal. Elara's eyes met his, wide with fear and determination, and together they understood the truth. The enemy wasn't random, the danger wasn't distant, and the night had only just begun. The chapter closed on that suspended heartbeat, the masked intruder frozen in light, the photograph held high, and Dominic and Elara poised to act. Every fiber of his being screamed that the next second would decide not just the night, but the fate of the children and the fragile bond between them. The moment the masked intruder stepped fully into the light, the hall seemed to shrink, every polished surface reflecting the tension like a magnifying glass. Dominic didn't hesitate. He lunged forward with precise speed, shoving Elara and the twins toward a narrow service corridor just off the ballroom, the sound of shattering crystal and screaming guests fading behind him. The babies cried in sharp, terrified bursts, their small hands curling instinctively as if sensing the predator's intent. Dominic's pulse thundered in his ears, a violent reminder that hesitation could cost them their lives. His mind cataloged exits, angles, obstacles, and the deadly trajectory of the intruder's gun, calculating 1,000 possible outcomes in a heartbeat. As they slipped into the corridor, the intruder opened fire, the shots ricocheting off concrete walls with a deafening, metallic clang. Sparks flew from the edges of chandeliers, glass shards danced dangerously in the hall, and panic rippled through the remaining guests. Dominic moved with a predator's grace, his hand shielding the children, his body a shield against the bullets that flew just wide enough to graze the edges of his coat. He could smell the gunpowder, feel the vibration of the ricochets in his bones, and sense the intruder's focus, meticulous and deliberate. Every instinct screamed that this was no random attack. Someone had orchestrated this night with meticulous planning, waiting for Elara's arrival to execute their plan. Elara's voice cut through the chaos, sharp and accusing. "You brought this into my life," she spat, her grip on the twins tight, her eyes blazing despite fear. "You never learn." Dominic didn't flinch, his jaw tightened. Eyes scanning for threats, movements calculated with lethal precision. "You've been in danger long before I arrived," he said, his tone low and controlled, carrying both warning and inevitability. His words weren't a defense. They were truth. Every gesture, every movement was designed to keep them alive. He had no time to argue. Survival was immediate. The corridor narrowed, forcing them into a single-file path. Dominic moved in front, Elara behind him, twins cradled tightly in her arms. The masked intruder's footsteps followed, relentless and echoing, each one a reminder that escape would not come easily. The attacker called the babies by name, a chilling familiarity that twisted Dominic's stomach. Whoever this was, they had studied the twins, memorized their patterns, and tailored this assault with intimate knowledge. The realization hit Dominic like a physical blow. Someone from his own world, someone with access and knowledge, had orchestrated this attack. Panic, usually an enemy, was absent. Calculation replaced it, precision dictating every motion. The intruder fired again, the bullet embedding in the concrete mere inches from Dominic's shoulder. He pivoted, using his body as a shield while guiding Elara and the children forward, the twins' tiny cries echoing in the narrow corridor. Each step was deliberate, balancing speed with protection, every movement a deadly dance between life and death. Elara's breath hitched as she saw the intruder's relentless pursuit, a predator unwilling to relent, calling the twins' names like a taunt and a threat simultaneously. Dominic's mind raced. The attack wasn't just opportunistic, it was intimate, personal, and designed to draw out fear, control, and submission. A sudden movement to the left, a crate slightly out of place, allowed Dominic to slide sideways, momentarily shielding Elara and the babies from a second round of shots. The intruders swore under their breath, frustration audible even through the mask. Dominic caught the slight twitch of a finger on the weapon, the almost imperceptible lean of a body ready to strike, and in an instant calculated the exact moment to act. He lunged, shoving Elara and the children behind a corner, just as the next bullet embedded itself in the wall where their heads had been moments before. Elara's grip on the twins tightened, nails digging into fabric, heart hammering. Dominic could feel her tension, her fear, but also her determination to survive, to protect what she held most precious. He glanced at her briefly, giving a nod that was both reassurance and command. Stay low, keep moving, and trust him to intercept danger. Her eyes met his, wide and fearful, yet understanding the unspoken hierarchy of survival in that moment. The intruder's advance faltered just enough for Dominic to strike. He closed the distance in a blur, seizing the attacker's wrist mid-motion and twisting with precise force. The gun clattered to the floor as Dominic's other hand gripped the intruder's collar, forcing them against the wall with brute efficiency. The attacker struggled, but Dominic's strength and training were unmatched in these moments of focused chaos. With one final calculated move, he unmasked the intruder, revealing a face that made his blood run cold. It was a man tied to the Vale Syndicate, a name Dominic knew well but had hoped never to see implicated in such treachery. The revelation was heavier than any bullet, colder than the marble walls around them. Someone from his own bloodline had orchestrated this hit, had sent one of their own to hunt the children, to terrorize Elara, to manipulate Dominic. His mind raced, questions forming as rapidly as adrenaline coursed through his veins. Why would someone from within orchestrate such an assault? Who had orchestrated this night with such cruel precision? Every connection, every past dispute, every possible betrayal reeled in his mind, threatening to consume rational thought. Elara stared at him, horrified, her face pale in the dim light, voice sharp and trembling. "Why would your family want my sons?" she demanded, clutching the children tighter, as though her sheer will could shield them from harm. Dominic had no immediate answer, only a clawing suspicion that felt like poison in his chest. His thoughts were a whirlwind of conjecture, memory, and fear, each one a fragment of a larger, terrifying truth. He realized the night had been planned, orchestrated, and executed with a precision that left no room for error. This wasn't chance. This wasn't random. It was a message, a test, and a manipulation all at once. The masked intruder fell to the ground in a final shuddering breath, blood seeping slowly into the concrete beneath him. His dying whisper cut through the corridor like a knife, low but deliberate. Victor. The single name carried weight, menace, and the promise of even darker revelations. Dominic's chest tightened, understanding instantly that this was no ordinary rival. Victor was someone from his own past, someone he had believed gone, someone whose return could unravel everything he had built. Elara's grip on the babies didn't falter, but her eyes flicked between Dominic and the dying man, her mind racing to process the implications. Dominic felt the icy grip of dread, the awareness that the enemy was no longer faceless, no longer abstract. They were personal, intimate, and had the ability to strike at the very heart of everything he held dear. He grabbed her hand, firm and unyielding, and guided them toward the exit. The cold night air was a sharp contrast to the stifling heat of the corridor, but Dominic's focus did not waver. Every shadow, every step, every sound outside could be another threat, and yet he moved with a lethal precision honed by years in a world where survival was never optional. As they emerged into the night, the chill biting through their coats, Dominic's mind was already racing through scenarios, contingencies, and strategies. Victor's name lingered in the air like smoke, heavy and suffocating. Who was he now? What did he want? And most importantly, how far would he go to manipulate, threaten, or destroy the family Dominic had only just begun to realize he had? The babies shifted in Elara's arms, their small movements grounding Dominic in a reality harsher than any gunfire, more urgent than any threat. He could feel their vulnerability as a tangible weight, one that demanded focus, strategy, and ruthless action. Elara whispered softly, "Victor, who is he?" But Dominic's lips pressed into a thin line. There were no immediate answers, only the certainty that their lives had just become infinitely more dangerous. The masked intruder's dying warning was a harbinger, the first ripple in a tide of chaos that had only just begun to crash over them. The night air pressed against them, cold and indifferent, while Dominic's mind calculated every possibility, every threat, and every outcome. He had shielded them from immediate danger, but the enemy was out there, patient, intelligent, and personal. Every sense sharpened, every instinct screamed vigilance. He had survived betrayals, wars, and bloodshed, but nothing had prepared him for the realization that someone from his own bloodline could orchestrate such horror. Elara's tears glistened in the streetlight as she glanced down at the twins, then back at Dominic. The gravity of the situation settled between them, a silent acknowledgement of the danger still lurking just beyond their sight. Dominic tightened his grip on her hand, a subtle signal that no matter the threat, he would face it, shield them, and fight back. But Victor's name echoed in his mind, a promise that the coming night would test every skill, every instinct, and every ounce of courage they possessed. The chapter closed on that chilling note, the cold night wrapping around them like a shroud, the street empty but alive with unseen threats, and Dominic and Elara poised on the knife's edge of survival, the specter of Victor looming over every decision, every heartbeat, and every breath. The street was cold, the night air sharp against their skin, carrying the faint scent of gunpowder, exhaust, and panic. Dominic's chest still thrummed with adrenaline, every muscle taut, every nerve screaming vigilance. The babies stirred slightly in Elara's arms, whimpering softly, their vulnerability anchoring Dominic's fury and focus. He tightened his grip on her hand, guiding them through the shadows, careful to keep every footstep measured, every glance scanning for threats. Victor's name lingered in his mind, heavy and dangerous, a specter from the past returning to upend everything Dominic had built, everything he thought he knew. Elara's eyes darted nervously between him, the darkened street, and the rear view of their convoy. "Who is he?" she demanded, her voice sharp and trembling, but commanding in its urgency. Dominic hesitated, struggling to form words as memories he had buried clawed their way back to the surface. Victor Vale, his older brother, the one presumed dead for over a decade, was alive. Dominic had mourned him, buried his guilt deep beneath layers of responsibility, and ascended to the throne of the Vale Syndicate, with the weight of leadership pressing into his every step. The realization that Victor had returned, that he had orchestrated events from the shadows, shattered Dominic's world with quiet, meticulous precision. Elara's expression shifted rapidly, fear giving way to raw fury, her eyes narrowing as she assessed the danger surrounding them. This was not some random threat from the outside world. This danger sprang from Dominic's realm, his bloodline, his past mistakes, and the ghosts he had long assumed were gone. She clutched the twins tighter, feeling their small bodies tremble with uncertainty. Their breaths came in sharp, shallow bursts, and Dominic could sense their fragility as if it were a physical weight pressing against his chest. Every instinct screamed that he must act, that he must shield them, and yet he felt the weight of guilt for failing them once already. He knelt slightly, lowering his face closer to Elara's, voice hushed but edged with urgency. "I promise, I will protect them. I will not fail again," he said. But even as the words left his mouth, the bitterness of truth struck his tongue. The betrayal he had long blamed on her might never have existed. It could have been Victor's deception all along, meticulously designed to manipulate, isolate, and torment. The thought burned like acid, leaving a taste of ash that he could not shake, and yet he could not deny the growing certainty that the enemy's hand had been hidden within his own family. Elara's glare pierced him, a mixture of fury and disbelief. "You left us alone, Dominic," she said, voice trembling but unwavering, "and now your world has become our danger." Her words were a whip, cutting through his focus, forcing him to confront not only the immediate threat, but the years of mistakes, the lives disrupted by ambition, pride, and deception. He could feel the weight of every decision, every betrayal, every moment of absence pressing into him, sharp and unyielding. The convoy ahead screeched into view, tires squealing against the wet asphalt, headlights cutting through the night like blades. Dominic's heart pounded, calculating distance, angles, and possible threats. The twins shifted again, their small hands clutching at Elara's neck, instinctively sensing the tension that radiated like a tangible force from every shadow. Dominic's mind raced, rapidly evaluating the safety of their immediate position, the potential escape routes, and the predators hidden within the night. Then, without warning, a vehicle blocked their path, sliding into place with precision that was far too deliberate to be coincidence. Dominic's breath hitched. Instinct screamed that this was no random obstacle. The headlights caught the silhouette of a man stepping from the driver's side, the darkness unable to conceal the cold. Deliberate menace radiating from his form. Victor. He had arrived, materializing from the shadows with all the weight of history and danger, wrapped into one commanding presence. Dominic's chest tightened, the past and present colliding violently in his mind, forcing him to confront not only the immediate threat, but the decades of unresolved betrayal that had shaped his life. Elara froze, instinctively pressing the twins closer to her chest. Her eyes darted from Dominic to the figure, trying to reconcile the stories she had heard, the whispers of Dominic's past, and the reality now standing before them. Fear and fury mingled in her gaze, each glance a question, a challenge, a desperate demand for clarity. Dominic's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing, as he assessed Victor with measured precision, every muscle tensed, every nerve alive. Ready to act the moment the threat escalated, Victor's lips curled into a faint, deliberate smile, one that carried no warmth, only a chilling certainty. "Dominic," he said, his voice low, controlled and laced with menace. "We meet again." The simplicity of the words belied the danger inherent in their delivery, the weight of a decade-long absence compressed into a single, purposeful moment. Dominic's mind cataloged the implications, the planning, the patience, the deliberate orchestration of chaos that had led to this confrontation. Every action Victor had taken now had purpose, strategy, and deadly precision behind it. Elara's grip on the twins tightened, the baby's small whimpers underscoring the tension in the night air. Dominic shifted subtly, positioning himself between her and Victor. Instinct and calculation guiding his movements. Every step, every breath, every heartbeat was measured against the threat posed by a brother he had thought dead, a man whose presence rewrote the past and threatened the present. His mind raced through possible strategies, escape routes and contingencies, all while keeping the twins safe, every second a tightrope walk over unseen danger. Victor stepped closer, the headlights glinting off his tailored coat, eyes locked on Dominic with a familiarity that made Dominic's skin crawl. He knew him, the man who had once been family, who had once shaped his understanding of loyalty, power, and legacy. But the man before him was something darker, sharper, and more dangerous. Each movement was deliberate, each word chosen to unsettle, to provoke, and to assert dominance. Dominic felt a chill run through his spine as the full weight of Victor's intentions became clear. This confrontation was not just about power, it was about control, revenge, and reclamation. Elara whispered under her breath, barely audible. "Why now? After all these years?" Dominic didn't answer immediately. His mind was a whirlwind of calculations, each possibility more dangerous than the last. He scanned the vehicle, the surrounding area, and the darkened alleyways, noting every shadow, every potential vantage point, every subtle movement that might indicate a second threat. The night was alive with danger, and every second of hesitation could tip the balance against them. The twins stirred, sensing the tension, tiny hands brushing against Dominic's coat. He adjusted his stance, lowering his body slightly, shielding them without breaking eye contact with Victor. The air was thick with anticipation, the silence punctuated only by distant city sounds and the subtle shift of Victor's weight as he advanced. Every muscle in Dominic's body screamed readiness, every instinct honed by years of survival, strategy, and combat. The past, present, and immediate danger collided in a perfect storm of tension and anticipation. Victor's voice carried again, a deliberate calm that made the night feel heavier, more oppressive. "You thought you could take everything, Dominic," he said. "You thought I was gone. You thought your children were safe." His gaze flicked momentarily toward the twins, and Dominic's protective instincts flared, a precise cold fire igniting in his chest. The babies were innocent, unaware of the complex web of betrayal, power, and revenge that now surrounded them, and Dominic's resolve hardened. No one would touch them. Elara's eyes met Dominic's briefly, conveying silent communication. Trust him, move carefully, survive. He nodded imperceptibly, muscles coiled, mind racing. Every shadow seemed to harbor threat, every sound a potential clue, every moment pregnant with imminent action. The street, quiet but charged with danger, was a battlefield, and Dominic stood at the center, ready to protect, to fight, and to confront the ghost of his past. The convoy remained idling, the engines vibrating beneath them, a sharp reminder that escape was possible, but not simple. Victor's calculated steps echoed against the wet asphalt, deliberate and menacing. Dominic's heart pounded in rhythm with the shifting tension, each beat a countdown to confrontation. Elara's hold on the twins tightened. Instinct and maternal fear sharpening her senses, even as Dominic prepared for the inevitable confrontation. Victor stopped just short of the convoy, his eyes never leaving Dominic's. The streetlights cast sharp shadows across his face, emphasizing the cold precision and lethal intent embedded in every line, every twitch of his expression. Dominic's jaw tightened. He felt the weight of the past decade pressing down, of mistakes, betrayals, and unresolved conflicts finally manifesting in flesh and blood before him. Every strategy, every contingency he had considered, every lesson in control and combat was now a necessary shield between innocence and death. The chapter ended with the convoy stalled, the night holding its breath, the twins clinging to Elara, and Victor stepping fully into the light. A living embodiment of every danger Dominic had long feared. Every detail of the moment, the chill in the air, the gleam of headlights, the tremble in Elara's hands, the subtle shifting of Victor's stance, set the stage for the confrontation that would define the night, leaving readers suspended on the knife's edge of tension. 5. The night air carried a sharp electric tension as Victor's figure loomed in front of them, framed by the glow of the convoy's headlights and the street lamps glinting off the wet asphalt. Dominic's muscles coiled, every nerve on edge, every movement measured, every step calculated. His hand instinctively moved toward Elara and the twins, a protective barrier forged from years of instinct and training. The babies squirmed lightly in her arms, sensing the tension in the air. Their small cries muffled against the fabric of her coat. Dominic's eyes never left Victor, noting every subtle movement, every shift in posture, every flicker of expression that could betray intent. Victor's lips curled into a faint smile, a predator's expression that didn't reach his eyes, a deliberate display of calm that made Dominic's gut churn with unease. "My heirs," Victor said, his voice smooth and deliberate, the words aimed to unsettle, to provoke, to assert control. Elara's grip on the twins tightened instinctively, pulling them closer to her chest as though her arms alone could shield them from the darkness radiating from Victor. Dominic's jaw hardened. Every instinct screamed that this was a psychological battle as much as a physical one, a confrontation designed to test resolve, control, and fear simultaneously. Victor took a step closer, deliberately slow, measured, each footfall a statement of dominance. His eyes glimmered in the headlights, cold, calculating, precise. "You've come so far, Dominic," he said, voice low, controlled but edged with an almost imperceptible menace. "And yet you still don't see the bigger picture." Dominic's fists clenched involuntarily. He could feel the tension radiating from Victor like a tangible force, each second thick with anticipation, each breath a countdown to potential catastrophe. Elara's eyes flicked between Dominic and Victor, fear and defiance battling across her expression. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "Why now, after all these years?" Dominic's response was silent, a tight nod, a signal that he had calculated the stakes. That the only movement that mattered now was the preservation of life and the confrontation of a threat that had come from his own bloodline. The twins whimpered again, small sounds that twisted Dominic's resolve into a weapon of protective precision. Victor's attention shifted subtly, his gaze briefly settling on the twins with an almost clinical assessment, eyes narrowing with interest. Dominic's stomach twisted, recognizing the predatory calculation behind every glance, every subtle movement. The intruder in the previous night had been only a prelude. Victor himself was the orchestrator, the puppeteer, and his intentions were clear: domination, control, reclamation. Each breath he took was calculated, each motion precise, designed to assert authority and test the boundaries of Dominic's restraint. Dominic finally stepped forward, his voice controlled but sharp, demanding, "Why, Victor? Why fake your death? Why come back now?" His words were edged with controlled fury, a mixture of betrayal and the protective instinct for his family. Victor laughed, a low, amused sound that echoed through the street like a warning. "I've been waiting for this moment," he said, tone deliberate, eyes glinting with anticipation, a predator savoring the initial fear of its prey. Dominic's mind raced, cataloging every possible angle, every weakness, every threat hidden within Victor's poised calm. Victor's words carried an almost surgical weight. "These children," he continued, gesturing toward the twins, "carry the rare Vale heterochromia, the mark of leadership, the trait that signifies who will inherit what is rightfully ours." Dominic's stomach twisted violently at the implication. The gut-wrenching knowledge that he had believed the twins were his base solely on that trait. Every instinct, every prior assumption felt suddenly fragile under the weight of Victor's deliberate manipulation. Elara's pulse spiked. Her grip on the babies tightened instinctively, and she realized with a cold, sudden clarity that Victor had no intention of harming them directly. His aim was far more insidious. He sought to use them, to manipulate them, to wield them as tools to reclaim control of the syndicate. The thought sent a spike of fear through her chest, but Dominic's steady presence offered a counterbalance, a shield forged of resolve, training, and blood-bonded determination. Dominic lunged, a blur of controlled motion, striking at Victor with a precision born of necessity and years of combat experience. Victor, anticipating the movement, stepped back fluidly, slipping into the vehicle as tires screeched against wet asphalt, the engine roaring to life in a violent chorus of chaos. The twins cried sharply, a sound that spiked Dominic's protective instincts, forcing him to adjust his stance, shield, and calculation in a fraction of a second. Every second now was a test, reaction, anticipation, survival. Victor's vehicle accelerated, cutting through the street with deliberate aggression. Dominic's fists clenched, fury and fear warring within him, as the realization crystallized that this was not only a confrontation over power, but over the lives of the most innocent and defenseless in his world. Each movement of Victor's escape was calculated to provoke, to destabilize, to manipulate. The road ahead was uncertain. But Dominic's mind cataloged every possibility, every route, every potential contingency. Then a slight motion in the vehicle caught his eye, and Dominic realized Victor had left something behind. an envelope resting conspicuously on the asphalt where the car had paused. It was a deliberate signal, a taunt, and a weapon all at once. Dominic's chest tightened as he recognized the weight of its potential content. DNA test results. The implications twisted through him with cold precision. Someone had gone to extreme lengths to manipulate perception, to craft lies that would bend the truth to Victor's advantage. Elara's eyes followed his gaze. "What is it?" she whispered, clutching the twins closer. Dominic picked up the envelope with deliberate caution, feeling the slight weight of paper, the subtle danger in its existence. Every detail of Victor's orchestration, his timing, his calm, his manipulation, now converged into a single chilling point. Deception had been layered upon deception, and the next revelation could destroy or reclaim everything. The envelope's edges were pristine, deliberately marked, as if Victor intended Dominic to open it to confront the manipulation directly. The twins stirred again, tiny fingers clutching instinctively as Dominic's mind cataloged the possible contents, the potential consequences, and the decisions that must be made in the coming moments. Elara's gaze locked on his, understanding without words the magnitude of the choice before him. Act, react, confront, or risk the future of their children. Dominic held the envelope with deliberate care, mind racing. Victor's words echoed in his mind, the twins' heterochromia, the inherited trait of leadership, the manipulation, the lies. Each element twisted together, forming a puzzle that only Victor could have designed. Every decision he had made, every action taken to protect, now faced scrutiny under the weight of this revelation. Elara's voice, low and tense, cut through his thoughts. "Don't let him manipulate you," she whispered, her eyes burning with both fear and defiance. Dominic nodded, absorbing her words, his grip on her hand tightening as the realization solidified. The next move was crucial, and hesitation could cost them everything. The night stretched on around them, silent except for the distant hum of the city, the sharp cry of the babies, and the fading roar of Victor's vehicle, leaving behind both a tangible threat and the enigma of the DNA envelope. Every instinct Dominic had screamed that the envelope was more than paper. It was a tool, a weapon, and a challenge, demanding immediate attention, careful calculation, and a readiness to confront truths that could redefine everything he believed about family, legacy, and loyalty. Elara's gaze never left his face, her grip on the twins tight, signaling silent agreement. The night was far from over, and the first revelation of truth had just been planted. Victor's presence lingered in their minds, a shadow over the night, a reminder that the enemy's control extended beyond physical confrontation, that manipulation and deceit were as potent as any bullet or blade. Dominic's resolve hardened. The envelope in his hand was a spark, igniting a fire that would not be easily extinguished, a prelude to revelations that promised both danger and clarity. The chapter ended with Dominic holding the envelope tightly, Elara clutching the twins. The street empty but charged with threat, the lingering echo of Victor's laughter in the distance, and the promise of truths wrapped in lies poised to shatter their understanding of the night, the family, and the syndicate. The envelope felt heavier than paper as Dominic's fingers trembled, each subtle motion echoing the weight of anticipation and dread that pressed down on him. He stood in the middle of the dimly lit street, Elara behind him, the twins' small, fragile forms cradled against her chest, their warmth a sharp contrast to the chill of the night. Dominic's chest tightened as he studied the edges of the paper, every crease and mark suggesting careful intention, every detail crafted to provoke, manipulate, and break him if he let it. Elara's hands hovered over his, trembling with a mixture of fear and pleading. "Dominic, please," she whispered, her voice fragile but edged with urgency. Don't open it. Whatever's inside, it's not worth it." Her eyes searched his, trying to anchor him, to prevent him from stepping into the trap laid so meticulously by Victor. But Dominic's gaze never wavered. He knew the moment of truth had arrived. Avoidance was no longer an option. He had to confront the reality, whatever it held. Taking a deep, shuddering breath, he ripped the envelope open, the sound loud against the stillness of the night, reverberating in the shadows around them. Inside lay a sheet of paper, carefully folded, the ink crisp and clinical. Dominic's eyes scanned the contents with lightning speed, taking in the words, numbers, and medical notations. His breath caught as the truth registered. The DNA test declared that the twins were not biologically his. The statement struck him like a hammer to the chest, pain flaring sharp and savage, threatening to break the calm he had fought so hard to maintain. His hands shook violently, the paper trembling against his fingertips as if it carried its own weight of betrayal. Elara's knees buckled, and she sank to the pavement, clutching the twins tightly as tears streamed down her face. Her voice was raw, breaking against the night air. I never knew, she admitted, her words trembling with shame, confusion, and grief. I was tested in the hospital. Someone switched it before I ever saw the results. I didn't know. Each syllable hung between them, a jagged truth that pierced deeper than any weapon. Dominic's heart wrenched at her admission. The realization that the foundation of everything he had believed was false, shaking him to his core. The chill of the night pressed against him, but it did nothing to cool the fire of rage and despair rising inside. Every part of Dominic's mind screamed at the enormity of Victor's manipulation. He had orchestrated every detail, every thread of deceit, every fabricated lie. The heterochromia, the patterns, the meticulous planning, all of it a construction designed to fracture Dominic and Elara, to manipulate their perceptions and emotions. The realization was like ice sliding through his veins. Victor had anticipated every response, every instinct, every move, crafting a narrative designed to dominate their world. Dominic's eyes lifted from the paper, and he found Elara trembling beside him, clutching the twins as though sheer force of will could protect them. Her gaze met his, a mixture of accusation, heartbreak, and unspoken fury. "You abandoned me because of lies," she said, her voice sharp despite tears, each word cutting through the night like a blade. "You left because you believed him, because you believed Victor's lies, not because of me." Her words hung heavy, more painful than any physical wound, revealing the depth of the emotional fracture between them. Dominic lowered his head, letting the weight of her words settle on him like a physical burden. The acknowledgement of his mistakes, of years lost to misperception, of love abandoned on the altar of deception, pressed down, heavy and unforgiving. Every step he had taken to protect, every decision he had made to secure their lives, now felt tainted by doubt and guilt. Yet beneath the crushing weight of regret, a spark of determination ignited. He would not let this end with lies, betrayal, or Victor's manipulations. The twins stirred, their small hands brushing instinctively against Elara's neck. Dominic's gaze softened for a brief moment, the tangible reality of their innocence grounding him, sharpening his focus. Their fragility, their dependence, their lives, their very existence demanded that he act with precision, speed, and absolute clarity. Every instinct honed over years in a dangerous world screamed at him. The next move would define everything. Before either of them could speak again, the quiet hum of Dominic's phone pierced the tension, startling in its sudden intrusion. He reached for it with hands still trembling, the weight of the envelope in one hand, the pulse of adrenaline still hammering through his veins. A single message blinked on the screen, text short and deliberate, the words chilling in their simplicity. "Doctor kidnapped. Real test held hostage." Dominic's jaw clenched, the combination of fury and urgency igniting a new level of focus. Victor had not only manipulated their perceptions and emotions, he had ensured that the truth remained inaccessible, held by someone under his control. Every assumption, every conclusion, every shred of certainty had been shattered. The stakes had escalated beyond deception, beyond emotional manipulation, to outright threat and control over the very evidence of truth. Elara's eyes widened, the twins pressing instinctively against her chest as she looked at Dominic. He has the doctor?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper, trembling with shock and fear. Dominic nodded, voice low, controlled, but sharp with the edge of lethal resolve. "Yes, the one who ran the real test. Victor has him. He wants to control the narrative, to twist the truth until it suits him. He's orchestrated everything, every lie, every manipulation, every fear we've felt tonight." Elara's hands shook as she clutched the twins tighter, the night's chill forgotten against the magnitude of the threat. Dominic's mind raced, cataloging contingencies, escape routes, and the precise steps necessary to reclaim the truth. Every instinct sharpened, every nerve alert. The street around them seemed to close in, shadows elongating, night air thickening with the weight of anticipation. Victor's presence lingered even from a distance, his manipulations tangible, a looming specter over their every thought and motion. Dominic's eyes flicked to the envelope again, the falsified test a stark contrast to the truth he now knew existed but could not yet access. The deception had been layered, carefully constructed, designed to fracture trust, isolate and manipulate. And Victor's plan was far from complete. The kidnapping of the doctor was a deliberate escalation, a direct challenge. Confront me, or remain trapped in my web of lies. Elara's voice, low and urgent, pierced the tension. "What do we do now?" Her question hung in the air, desperate yet resolute. Dominic's gaze hardened, eyes sweeping the empty street, absorbing every shadow, every sound, every potential threat. "We find him," he said, voice precise, controlled, a mixture of resolve and simmering fury. "We get the doctor and we uncover the truth. Nothing Victor has done, nothing he has manipulated, will stop us. Not tonight, not ever." The twins stirred again, small whimpers echoing against the cold asphalt. Dominic adjusted his stance, ensuring Elara and the children remained shielded, body coiled like a predator ready to strike, every muscle tuned to the demands of survival, protection, and vengeance. The night held its breath, thick with tension, each moment stretching into an eternity, every second pregnant with possibility, danger, and revelation. Dominic's hands tightened around the envelope, his mind cataloging the steps ahead. Victor had orchestrated lies, fear, manipulation, and now a hostage. But Dominic's resolve had crystallized. He would reclaim the truth, confront the threat, and protect his family at all costs. The stakes had never been higher, the danger never more personal, and the enemy never more intimate. The chapter closed with Dominic, Elara, and the twins standing in the darkened street. The falsified DNA test in hand, the chilling weight of Victor's orchestration hanging over them, and the single, undeniable truth, the real test, and the doctor who held it was in enemy hands, a perilous key to restoring the family, uncovering the truth, and confronting Victor's manipulations head-on. The abandoned shipping yard loomed before them like a fortress of shadows, metal crates stacked haphazardly, rust gleaming under the pale moonlight that filtered through cracks in the corrugated walls. Dominic's senses were razor-sharp, every step calculated, each shadow scanned for movement, every sound registered, the creak of metal, the distant scuttle of rats, the soft cry of a caged life. Elara clutched the twins tighter, their warmth a stark contrast to the cold, damp night. their small breaths quick and fragile, as though echoing the tension around them. Dominic led them forward, body tense, mind cataloging every possible danger, every escape route, every subtle clue Victor might have left behind. Victor's signature mark of control was everywhere. Subtle footprints, deliberate shadows, faint sounds of machinery, and the ominous echo of a single terrified voice from within a distant container. Dominic's heart raced, every nerve straining, every muscle coiled for instant action. He gestured for Elara to stay close, to remain shielded behind him as he advanced toward the source of the muffled cries. The twin squirmed slightly in her arms, sensing the tension, tiny fingers pressing instinctively into her coat. Each step forward was a negotiation with fate, a delicate balance of stealth and aggression. Every movement calculated to preserve life while uncovering the truth. The first crate loomed like a barrier of iron and shadows. Dominic pressed his back against it, scanning the perimeter with meticulous precision. The subtle creak of hinges echoed through the yard, a whisper of warning, a faint signal that someone, or something, waited within. He raised a gloved hand to Elara's lips, signaling silence, the weight of every second pressing down like lead. Elara nodded, eyes wide, pressing the twins closer, their soft whimpers barely audible against the vast emptiness of the yard. Dominic's instincts screamed the danger was immediate. He crouched slightly, moving toward a second crate, where the muffled voice grew more desperate, more human, tinged with fear and exhaustion. The doctor, he realized, the one who had held the real DNA results. His chest tightened, a mixture of rage and urgency flooding his system. Victor had gambled everything on deception, but Dominic's resolve had crystallized. He would reclaim the truth no matter the cost. Elara whispered, barely audible, "Dominic, be careful. He's trapped someone in there." Her words were a spark, igniting the calculated fury within him. Dominic's gloved hand slid along the cold metal, every step measured, aware of the shadows, the angles, the potential for ambush. A single misstep could cost them everything, the twins' safety, the truth, or even lives. The yard seemed to close around them, every shadow a potential threat, every sound magnified by tension. As they approached the container, Dominic could see the outline of Victor's men, armed, alert, and calculating. The tension coiled like a spring inside him, ready to release with lethal precision. He spoke quietly but sharply, voice carrying authority honed over years. "Drop your weapons, step away from him." The command echoed in the yard, metallic and unyielding. The men hesitated, calculating their odds, but Dominic's gaze, sharp and unwavering, made hesitation impossible. One of the men moved, a sudden lunge toward the twins, and Dominic reacted instantly, a blur of motion, disarming him with calculated force, sending him sprawling across the wet ground. The twins cried sharply, a sound that tore through the night, fueling Dominic's resolve. Elara pressed them closer, tears streaking her face as fear and hope collided within her. The remaining men froze, recognizing the lethal precision of Dominic's movements, their confidence faltering under his unyielding presence. The door to the container creaked open, revealing the doctor inside. He was bruised, battered, and terrified, eyes wide with disbelief as Dominic stepped forward, every muscle coiled, every motion deliberate. "It's okay," Dominic said, voice controlled but edged with urgency. "I'm here to help." "Who did this?" The doctor's hands shook as he lifted the small, blood-streaked bag holding the twins' real DNA results, eyes darting nervously toward the shadows where Victor's men had been. Victor's influence was immediate, a shadow over every movement, every breath. The doctor's lips trembled as he whispered the truth, words halting as if the weight of revelation could break him. The original test, the twins, they are Dominic's biological children. Victor. He faked the second test. He even altered the baby's eyes. Gene manipulation. To frame you. The words fell like hammers, shattering falsehoods and revealing the scope of Victor's calculated cruelty. Elara sobbed, tears flowing freely as relief and rage collided within her. The twins, sensing their mother's emotions, nestled closer into her arms. Tiny hands clinging instinctively, Dominic's chest rose and fell with a mix of fury, disbelief, and clarity. The lies, the manipulation, the years of false assumptions, they unraveled in his mind with relentless precision. Every calculated move Victor had made was exposed, every deception laid bare. Dominic's eyes hardened, fixing on Victor's shadow at the far edge of the yard. Rain began to fall, cold and relentless, drumming against metal and concrete, soaking them, mirroring the intensity of the confrontation. The rooftop above the shipping yard glimmered with water, every surface slippery, every shadow a potential threat. Victor had orchestrated every detail with precision, but Dominic now held the truth, the weapon to reclaim what had been manipulated. He moved quickly, every step measured, guiding Elara and the twins towards safety while preparing to confront Victor. The doctor trailed behind, gratitude and fear mingling in his exhausted movements. Dominic's mind raced, cataloging every possibility: ambushes, traps, angles of attack, escape routes, and leverage. Victor had planned meticulously, but Dominic's resolve, sharpened by the raw immediacy of threat, was unstoppable. As they reached the rooftop, the storm intensified, rain cascading over steel and concrete, reflecting the dramatic tension of the confrontation. Dominic's boots hit the wet surface with controlled precision, eyes scanning every shadow, every movement. And then he saw him. Victor, poised, deliberate, holding a gun. Every instinct screamed at Dominic: focus, protect, act. Victor's gaze flicked toward the twins, a faint, deliberate smirk curling his lips. "I've waited for this," he said, voice calm, chilling in its precision. "All these lies, all this manipulation, it culminates here." Dominic's heart raced, instincts flaring, every protective impulse converging in one sharp focus. No harm would come to those children. The wind howled, rain slashed against his coat, and the world seemed to pause for a heartbeat, the tension stretching to breaking point. Dominic's hands clenched, every nerve alive, every muscle prepared for movement, anticipating Victor's next action. And then, the ultimate terror crystallized. Victor raised the gun, not at Dominic, but at one of the twins. Elara screamed, the sound cutting through the storm, raw and primal, as Dominic lunged forward, body coiled, eyes fixed, every instinct honed to a razor's edge. The world slowed in that instant, rain streaking, metal slick, the gun aimed at the most innocent, the most vulnerable, the very heart of everything he had fought to protect. Time became a blade, slicing between anticipation and action, every heartbeat a countdown. The chapter ended with Dominic's protective dive, Elara's terrified cry echoing, the twins' soft whimpers piercing the storm, and Victor's smirk unwavering even as the first collision of forces, the desperate, protective, and righteous fury of a father against the calculated menace of a brother, was about to erupt in full force. The rooftop, slick and treacherous, became the stage for a confrontation that would decide not just survival, but the future of the family and the unraveling of every lie Victor had meticulously constructed. The moment stretched like a razor as Dominic's eyes locked on the gun, aimed at his child, heart pounding with a ferocity he had never known. Instinct took over, every second elongating as if time itself had slowed to accommodate the desperate precision of the moment. With a surge of adrenaline, he lunged forward, body coiling around the twin, shielding him as the crack of the gunshot ripped through the stormy night. The bullet grazed Dominic's arm, a sharp, searing pain that threatened to steal his focus, but he barely noticed, consumed by one singular drive: protect his family at all costs. Elara's scream tore across the rooftop, raw and primal, her voice echoing off metal walls, carried by the pounding rain. She rushed toward them, arms outstretched, her movements frantic yet precise, driven by love and terror intertwined. The twins whimpered sharply, tiny voices piercing the chaos, hands clutching instinctively to the safety of their parents' bodies. Dominic's other hand lashed out, grabbing Victor's wrist with unrelenting strength, twisting the gun away from the children with brutal precision. The weapon clattered against the wet rooftop, sliding dangerously close to the edge, each second a countdown to potential disaster. The rain pelted down, stinging like tiny needles, soaking hair, clothes, and skin, masking sweat and blood with its cold, relentless weight. Dominic's muscles coiled with every instinct honed over years of survival and confrontation. He tackled Victor, the fight erupting in a chaotic storm of raw power, rain-slicked movement, and desperate rage. Each punch, each grapple, each struggle carried the weight of years of betrayal, fear, and frustration. Dominic's teeth clenched against pain, his arm bleeding but irrelevant compared to the stakes at hand, the life of his children, the woman he loved, the family he would no longer let slip away. Victor's smirk never faltered, even as Dominic's fists rained down with lethal precision. But the rooftop betrayed him. The slick steel and wet concrete became an enemy of balance, a neutral arbiter in a battle fueled by fury and desperation. Victor faltered for the briefest instant, his foot sliding, body unsteady. Dominic's grip tightened, muscles burning as he pushed with all his might. The moment was fragile, a heartbeat separating victory from disaster. Then, in an instant, Victor lost his footing, arms flailing as he slipped toward the edge. The twins cried again, small, terrified sounds that reverberated through Dominic's chest as he lunged forward to block any catastrophe. Time seemed to fracture as Victor fell, gravity claiming him with a final chaotic motion that ended the immediate threat. Silence fell across the rooftop, broken only by the relentless drum of rain and the distant echoes of adrenaline-fueled breaths. Dominic collapsed onto the wet steel, chest heaving, arm throbbing where the bullet grazed, every nerve still on high alert. Elara knelt beside him instantly, rain streaming down her face, mingling with tears as she pressed the twins closer to his chest. Her hands trembled over him, over the children, over the fragile balance they had all fought to protect. Dominic lowered his face, breathing hard, every ounce of exhaustion and pain crashing over him, but he remained conscious, alert, fiercely alive. The twins curled instinctively into his chest, small hands clutching the folds of his soaked coat, trusting and recognizing him with an instinctive clarity that tore through the lingering fear. Dominic's heart ached with relief, with love, with the sharp edge of survival, and with the dawning realization that he had finally chosen correctly. Them, his family, over every empire, every grudge, every lingering shadow of past betrayal. Elara reached up, pressing her hands to his face, her gaze searching, steadying, seeing not just the man who had protected them tonight, but the man he had been capable of all along. "You should have fought for me sooner," she whispered, voice trembling but full of warmth, pain, and reconciliation. Dominic's lips pressed briefly to her hands, a silent acknowledgement of mistakes, of absence, of all that had been lost. I should have," he admitted, voice low, hoarse, honest, carrying all the weight of the nights spent apart, all the misunderstandings, and all the lies Victor had built between them. The rain continued to hammer down, relentless, but it no longer felt threatening. It seemed to cleanse the chaos, to wash away the danger, to mark a new beginning. The twins, warm and safe against his chest, nestled closer, murmuring softly in their sleep, their trust unbroken by the night's terror. Dominic's hand moved to brush the wet hair from their faces, and he realized with a clarity that had eluded him for years that protection was not just instinct, it was choice, deliberate, unwavering, and absolute. Elara's fingers traced the lines of his face, tracing the contours of a man shaped by experience, love, regret, and resilience. She whispered, barely audible over the storm, "You finally chose right." Dominic's lips pressed to her temple, a silent vow, a promise that no external force, no manipulation, no lies would ever come between them again. The chaos, the betrayal, the manipulation, all of it had ended here, in this storm-soaked rooftop with the clarity of choice, courage, and love as their shields. Every breath of Dominic's carried both pain and relief. The world seemed to hold its breath with them, acknowledging the conclusion of the storm. The twins stirred slightly, sensing calm, sensing safety, sensing the return of a father they had nearly lost. Elara pressed closer, their bodies forming a triangle of protection, warmth, and reunion against the relentless rain, against the echoes of danger past. Dominic's voice, hoarse and low, carried softly to her ears. "We're together now. No more running. No more lies. No more fear." The storm's rhythm began to feel less oppressive, more like a lullaby than a threat, as Dominic's gaze swept across the rooftop, taking in the remnants of the struggle. Victor's threat was gone. The chaos had ended, leaving only clarity. Each heartbeat between him and his family was a pulse of life reclaimed, of trust restored, of a future no longer dictated by manipulation or fear. The night's terror had forged a bond sharper, stronger, and more resilient than anything they had known before. Elara's hand lingered on Dominic's face, thumb brushing the blood-mixed rain, tracing the pain, the survival, the choices that had finally led them to this moment. "Let's go home," she whispered, soft but resolute. The weight of years, fear, and longing compressed into those 3 words. Dominic didn't hesitate. He pressed the twins closer, kissed her forehead gently, and rose unsteadily to his feet, feeling the exhaustion, the pain, and the relief all converge into a single, powerful clarity. This was the life he had fought for, the life he had finally chosen. The rooftop stretched behind them, glistening with rain, reflecting the dawn that had yet to arrive. A symbolic reminder that after darkness comes light, after chaos comes peace. Dominic held the twins against his chest, Elara at his side, and for the first time since their separation, hope did not feel dangerous, fear did not feel suffocating, and love did not feel like a risk. They had survived, endured, and emerged stronger, united by choice, courage, and the unbreakable bond of family. The chapter, and the story, ended not with words, but with the quiet affirmation of survival, the soft murmurs of the twins, the steadying grip of hands intertwined, and the storm beginning to abate, leaving behind a world washed clean, a family reunited, and a future forged in love, clarity, and unwavering protection. The rooftop became a testament not to violence or betrayal, but to choice, to courage, and to the heart that finally knew where it belonged. Thank you for joining me on Heart-Woven Tales today. If this story touched your heart or kept you on the edge of your seat, make sure to like and share it with someone who loves real emotional stories. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a tale that will make you feel, cry, and believe in love and destiny all over again. Until next time, stay safe, keep your hearts open, and remember, every story has a twist waiting to be discovered.